By 6 every morning, the lobby of Santa Marta apartments smelled like starch, coffee, and steam. Olivia Reyes liked it that way. It meant her mother's irons were hot, the sewing machines were already chattering, and people were still bringing clothes to mend instead of packing them into boxes for somewhere cheaper. The lobby wasn't really a lobby anymore. Isabel Reyes had turned half of it into a seamstress shop 15 years ago, with a curtain rod, 2 donated mirrors, and a hand-painted sign that said the Reyes Alterations. Cash, pay later, or bring empanadas. Everyone in Little Village knew the place. 6 floors of peeling paint and iron railings, brick gone black in places from old exhaust and older fires, stairs that groaned like old knees. Santa Marta had bad plumbing, weak heat, and an elevator that had been temporarily out of service for 11 years. It also had families that had survived everything from layoffs to deportation raids to landlords who preferred building violations over repairs. The Reyes family occupied 2 apartments on the 4th floor, door to door, technically separate and practically one organism. In 4B, Olivia slept in a room partitioned with bookshelves and curtains, beside stacks of case files and a desk she'd rescued from an alley. In 4C, her grandmother Teresa kept a rosary hanging from the kitchen window and insulin in a mini fridge that rattled at night. Mateo, Olivia's younger brother, drifted between both units depending on work, usually collapsing after double shifts at a packaging plant with his steel-toed boots still on. Mateo's son, little Nico, slept wherever he found safety. His father's couch, his bisabuela's bed, Olivia's lap when thunder startled him awake. They paid rent in ways banks didn't recognize. Cash rolled tight, favors exchanged, repairs done by cousins, meals delivered to sick neighbors, childcare bartered for groceries. Pride made the math work where payroll records could not. Olivia's day began in the hallway with a clipboard. By 9, she'd already translated 3 legal notices for tenants on floors 2 and 5. 1 utility shut-off warning, 1 court summons no one had explained in Spanish, and 1 letter from a management company that no resident had ever heard of. She read every line twice because she knew the trick language. Non-compliance. Unauthorized occupants. Administrative adjustment. Beautiful words for ugly outcomes. By early evening, she was in a cramped office 3 blocks away, working a part-time paralegal shift for a tenants' rights attorney who had once told her, half admiring and half afraid, "You read an eviction filing like someone looking for fingerprints." On nights she wasn't there until close. She logged into online classes after midnight toward legal certification, eyes burning as she highlighted state housing statutes, while upstairs neighbors argued through thin ceilings. She had learned young that eviction wasn't one event. It was a slow machine. A late fee here, a missing repair there, a posted notice with the wrong date, a clerk accidentally rejecting your filing, a hearing moved to a day you couldn't miss work. By the time deputies arrived to change the locks, most of the violence had already happened in paperwork no one bothered to translate. When her father was alive, he used to say men didn't steal neighborhoods with guns first. They stole them with signatures, then brought guns for anyone who noticed. He had died in a warehouse blaze when Olivia was 16. Official cause: electrical malfunction. Her mother had stopped saying his name out loud after the funeral. After that, most days Olivia and Isabel spoke in practical fragments: thread, rent, groceries, Nico, while the subject that mattered sat between them like broken glass. On a gray Tuesday in March, Santa Marta got a new owner. No one saw the sale happen. No one in the building got a letter. It arrived as gossip first, then confirmation from a city database printout Olivia pulled during lunch. Property transfer through 2 limited liability companies with addresses that led nowhere, then ultimately to Moretti Urban Holdings. People in Little Village knew the name Moretti the way people recognize thunder before rain. By 4 that afternoon, men in expensive jackets were in the courtyard taking measurements. By 5, 2 security cameras appeared over the front entrance where none had been for years. By 6, someone had scrubbed the old landlord's number off the intercom panel. Olivia met Dante Moretti just before sunset, on the cracked concrete near the dumpsters where kids played soccer between parked cars. He stepped out of a black sedan and did not look around like a man entering hostile territory. He looked around like a man auditing inventory. Tailored charcoal suit, white shirt open at the collar, no tie, expensive watch turned inward on his wrist as if to hide it. His face was clean-shaven, expression unreadable. Dark hair combed back. Only his right hand broke the polish. Bruised knuckles, scabbed at the middle 2 fingers, like he'd hit something hard recently and expected to do it again. When residents began gathering at balconies and stair landings, he looked up and met their eyes one by one without smiling. No wave, no speech, no apology. Olivia descended the front steps before she could decide to wait. "Are you Dante Moretti?" He turned toward her. "Yes." "You bought this building?" "I did." "For what?" His gaze flicked to the laundry lines strung across the courtyard, then to the chipped stucco and patched windows. "Redevelopment." The word landed like a slap. Around them, people went quiet. "We're occupied," Olivia said. "These are families, elderly tenants, kids, people with leases." "If paperwork is in order," he replied, "my office will communicate." Her jaw tightened. "You mean your lawyers will file mass evictions through shell companies and call it compliance?" A muscle moved in his cheek, almost a smile, and not one. "You must be Olivia Reyes." She hated that he knew her name. "You must be exactly who I thought you were." For a moment she thought she saw something like fatigue pass through his eyes. Then it was gone. "Tell your neighbors to monitor official notices. Don't trust rumors." He left with the same calm he arrived with. The courtyard murmured after him. Fear, curses, prayers, calculations. Above, from a third-floor window, an old man crossed himself twice. Olivia stood still until the sedan disappeared, then pulled out her phone and started a list. Ownership records, permit applications, code complaints, prior litigation against Moretti entities, emergency injunction strategy. War, she thought, always started politely. 48 hours later, the war posted itself to every door. They came just after dawn in 2 SUVs and a van marked with a private legal courier logo no one had seen before. 4 men in dark jackets, sidearms visible at their hips, though they weren't police, moved floor by floor with staple guns and clipboards. 30-day vacate notices. Every unit. No exemptions. By the time Olivia reached the second-floor landing, one of them was stapling a notice over a paper Virgin Mary taped to Doña Celia's door. Celia, 73 and half blind, stood shaking in her slippers, asking in Spanish if they were shutting off the water. "Take your hands off that," Olivia snapped, yanking the paper free. The server raised his chin. "Interfering with service is obstruction. Armed intimidation in a residential building is harassment," she shot back. "Give me your full name for the record." He smirked, but looked away first. Within an hour, panic moved faster than facts. People were calling cousins in Cicero, asking if 5 could sleep in one bedroom. A teenage mother on floor 5 cried because her son's school was 3 blocks away and she had no car. Mateo stood in the hallway reading and rereading the notice like maybe one more look would produce mercy between lines. 30 days? He said. "Where are we supposed to go in 30 days?" In 4C, Teresa pressed her palm to the mini fridge. counting insulin pens under her breath as if inventory could ward off disaster. Isabel sat at the kitchen table, threading a needle with shaking fingers she pretended were steady. When Olivia started listing next legal steps, Isabel nodded once without looking up. Neither mentioned the smell of smoke that lived in both their memories. Olivia found Dante in the courtyard at noon, surrounded by 2 men from his security team and a property manager with a tablet. She walked straight through them and slammed a stack of notices against his chest hard enough that papers bent. "You did this to an occupied building with seniors and children," she said, loud enough for every window to hear. "You're not clearing vacancies. You're manufacturing displacement." His bodyguards shifted. Dante didn't. "Ms. Reyes, no. You listen. I will file injunctions. I will challenge service. I will drag every shell company you used into discovery, and I will put your name in every newsroom in this city. You want redevelopment? Try doing it under a microscope." The courtyard held its breath. Dante took the top notice, glanced at it, then looked back at her. His voice was low, carrying anyway. "I bought the building to clear it, not debate it." Something hot and helpless flashed through her chest. She hated that his calm made him sound inevitable. He handed the papers back. "Get your filings in on time." Then he walked away. That night, smoke hit first. Olivia was in 4B reviewing case templates when she smelled something chemical under the usual scents of garlic and detergent. Not electrical, not grease, sharper, oily. A second later, Nico screamed from the hallway and someone downstairs shouted, "Fuego! Fuego!" The lights flickered. Then the fire alarm began its broken, stuttering wail. She opened the door and saw gray-black smoke climbing the stairwell like a living thing. From below came a dull boom, then a rush of heat that rolled up the corridor and shoved everyone backward. The basement stairwell had become a chimney. People spilled from apartments, coughing, clutching children, dragging walkers. Someone pounded on Teresa's door. Someone else was praying in rapid bursts. "Wet towels," Olivia yelled. "Stay low, stay against the wall, Mateo." He burst from 4C with Teresa's arm over his shoulder, Nico clinging to his neck. Isabel followed with a canvas bag and no coat, eyes wide and distant. The main stairwell was already a smoke tunnel. The back exit was 2 flights down past the laundry room and now unreachable. Olivia dropped to her knees, shirt over her nose, pulling at neighbors as they crawled. A door on the landing jammed. Then a boot slammed into it from the other side, and it flew inward. Dante Moretti emerged through smoke with a flashlight in one hand, jacket wrapped around his mouth. "This way," he barked. "Roof access ladder now." For one heartbeat, Olivia froze at the absurdity of him here, now, in the thick of it. He moved past her, lifting Nico straight from Mateo's arms when the boy started coughing too hard to breathe. "Keep him upright," he told Olivia. "Don't let him sleep." "How did you get in?" she demanded, still crawling. "Inspection," he said. "Move." He kicked another swollen door open, herded 3 tenants through, then doubled back for a man on oxygen who couldn't stand. By the time sirens finally sliced through the night, Dante had carried Nico down the fire escape himself. Soot streaking his collar, knuckles split open again where he'd smashed through a utility lock. Paramedics treated smoke inhalation in the street under red strobes. Children cried wrapped in borrowed blankets. Teresa sat on the curb, breathing through an oxygen mask, whispering prayers for everyone by name. Isabel sat beside her, rigid, clutching the canvas bag in both hands. When Olivia knelt to check them, her mother answered with short, formal words, as if speaking through a closed door. An investigator in a city jacket muttered, "Likely faulty wiring," before dawn, and asked perfunctory questions no one trusted. Olivia didn't answer immediately. She walked to the basement access, ducked under caution tape while no one stopped her, and crouched near the utility room door. The lock plate hung twisted, not melted. The metal around it was freshly fractured, not warped by heat. On the concrete threshold, beneath the wet ash, she caught the unmistakable smell again. Gasoline. Not old wire. Not bad luck. She stood slowly, smoke still stinging her eyes, and looked up at Santa Marta's blackened windows. 30-day notices fluttered damp on doors above, edges curled from heat. If legal paper couldn't empty the building fast enough, someone had tried fire. By sunrise, everyone in the neighborhood had a theory, and none of them were small enough to survive. Some said Moretti staged the blaze to terrorize tenants into leaving quietly. Others said rivals were warning him off the property. A few whispered about city inspectors getting paid to mislabel arson as malfunction whenever the right developers called. Nobody said accident with conviction. Olivia sat at her mother's work table in the lobby, laptop open, fingers blackened at the cuticles from soot she hadn't scrubbed clean. Around her, displaced tenants milled with paper cups of coffee and lists of medicines they needed replaced. Nico slept on a bolt of fabric, cheeks streaked with ash. Matteo stared at the boarded basement door like he could force answers from plywood. Isabel worked at the farm machine in silence, close enough to touch, distant enough to feel like another room. She began triage like she always did. Names, unit numbers, injuries, lost prescriptions, replacement IDs, emergency motel vouchers, witness statements. She translated for elderly tenants filing incident reports. She called a legal aid clinic and left 3 messages. She drafted emergency petitions to halt evictions pending safety investigation. By 10, the first clerk at the county filing desk told her the system was down. By noon, another said she'd used an outdated form. By 1:30, she watched a man in an expensive suit file 3 motions ahead of her with no waiting and no questions asked. That was Chicago's favorite illusion, that courts were neutral terrain. Olivia knew better. Landlords, judges, police commanders, zoning officials. People who met in daylight like adversaries and drank together after dark. She had seen too many tenants lose cases before stepping into court. Across town, Dante Moretti would be getting calls she could not hear from men with heavier names than his, demanding timelines and results. She could feel the pressure already in the building like static. If he slowed the eviction, whoever wanted Santa Marta cleared might escalate again. If he pushed forward, families like hers would scatter before anyone proved a crime. She thought of Teresa's insulin, of Matteo sleeping between shifts because he worked too much to be poor and still was. Of her mother's sewing tables, the only business Isabel had ever owned without asking permission from a man, even if mother and daughter now shared more square footage than trust. Of her father, dead in a fire report that had always felt too neat. A building is only brick on paper. In life, it is medication in the fridge. School routes memorized by children, neighbors who know who needs checking when sirens sound. Lose the building and you lose evidence, witnesses, routine, language, the fragile web that keeps the vulnerable alive. She looked up when footsteps crossed the lobby. Dante stood at the doorway. No suit jacket now, white shirt sleeves rolled, a bandage over one hand. He didn't step fully inside. "We're arranging temporary relocation for affected units," he said. "You should take it." Olivia laughed once, bitter and exhausted. "So people can be dispersed before they testify?" His jaw set. "People can't sleep in smoke damage. Neither can they fight from 6 different shelters." For a long second, they held each other's gaze across humming sewing machines and scorched air. 2 people who should have remained enemies and now shared a fire scene neither could explain away. File whatever you're going to file, he said finally. I already am. He nodded once, as if confirming something to himself, and turned to go. Mr. Moretti? She called after him. If this was meant to scare us out, it failed. He paused without looking back. Then be careful who you think this belongs to. When he left, Olivia opened a new document and typed the first line of what would become the fight of her life. Petition for emergency injunctive relief and preservation of evidence. The cursor blinked under the title as Olivia added names, dates, unit numbers, and every procedural phrase she knew could force a judge to look before looking away. She hit print. The old lobby printer coughed twice, jammed, then surrendered 27 pages. Mateo, she said, not looking up. I need copies, 3 sets. And somebody find Doña Celia's inhaler refill bottle. I need the prescription number. I got it, he said, already moving. She stapled affidavits while steam hissed from Isabel's iron, and tenants drifted close in nervous clusters. What does this do? Asked Mr. Paredes from 2A, hands trembling around a coffee cup. It asks the court to freeze evictions and preserve all fire evidence, Olivia said. No repairs, no demolition, no accidental cleanup until independent investigators inspect. Will they grant it? She met his eyes. They'll try not to. We make it harder. By noon, she had filed in person, demanded a stamped receipt, photographed the timestamp, emailed copies to legal aid attorneys, a housing reporter she trusted, and 2 church coalitions that monitored displacement cases. Before she left the courthouse, she filed a second motion, compelling production of maintenance logs, electrical inspection records, security contracts, and surveillance footage from the newly installed cameras. War had gone from polite to procedural. By late afternoon, 2 men in black jackets with Moretti security on the chest appeared on the 4th floor with relocation packets and smiles too practiced to be kind. We're offering temporary assistance, one of them told Teresa in loud, slow English, as if age meant stupidity. Sign here. Receive hotel voucher. Olivia stepped between them. She signs nothing without translated terms and counsel. The second guard tilted his head. Counsel? You her lawyer? Today, yes. He looked her over, then passed her toward open doors where neighbors watched. People who cooperate get better options. People who drag this out lose priority. Olivia lifted her phone and angled it so both logos were in frame. Repeat that. Their expressions hardened. Put that down, first guard said. Say your names first. They backed off, muttering, and headed downstairs. She followed as far as the landing and caught them slipping unsigned packets under doors with red X marks already printed in one corner. Not addresses, targets. That night, she requested camera footage from the hallway and got an email from building management 5 minutes later. System malfunction. No recoverable data. She laughed out loud once, joyless. New cameras, same old erasures. The next morning, when she pushed into the temporary management office in what used to be the ground floor storage room, the maintenance binder on the desk had fresh tab labels and a chemical clean scent, like somebody had assembled it from blank paper that morning. The first 40 pages were boilerplate. The last 10 were invoices dated 2 years before Moretti's purchase, signed by a company that didn't exist in Illinois records. She photographed everything. Private office, said a voice behind her. Dante stood in the doorway, tie loosened, phone at his ear. He ended the call without taking his eyes off her. You scrubbed the logs, she said. If I scrubbed them, he said, you wouldn't be standing there photographing fake invoices. She narrowed her gaze. Then who? He stepped closer, lowered his voice. The same people trying to make this fire look stupid and small. Your security is threatening tenants. My actual security doesn't work floors without my sign-off. Jackets say otherwise. Dante swore under his breath, a rare crack in the calm. Who approached you? She showed him the clip. His jaw tightened as the guard's threat replayed. I'll handle it, he said. You keep saying that like handle and prove are the same thing. Before he could answer, a woman from 5C rushed in, breathless and crying. Olivia, it's Matteo. He's at St. Agnes. Somebody hit him. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. Matteo sat propped on a narrow bed with purple blooming along his cheekbone and stitches at his hairline, trying to joke through split lips. 3 guys jumped me by the loading dock, he said when Teresa stepped out with a nurse. Asked if I was the brother who can't mind his own business. Took my backpack, left my wallet. They wanted papers. Olivia's throat went tight. Did you see faces? Hoods. One had a jacket, black. Said Moretti something. Dante arrived 10 minutes later, unannounced, bringing a doctor with him and a look Olivia had never seen on him before. Controlled fury turned inward like a blade. He listened without interrupting, then asked Matteo 2 precise questions. Direction of approach, camera poles near the loading dock. He made a call in Italian so fast, Olivia only caught fragments. Dock, timestamp. Bring him now, no delays. When he ended, he looked at Olivia. You're moving tonight? She folded her arms. No. This wasn't random. Nothing is random. That doesn't mean I disappear. It means your grandmother and nephew become leverage. His voice dropped. I can't protect people spread across 4 hallways with half my crew compromised. Your crew is the problem. My crew is why your brother is breathing instead of buried. Silence snapped between them. Matteo watched, bloodless from pain meds, but alert enough to understand the stakes. Livy, he murmured, just for a few days. She hated that fear made practical arguments sound like surrender. She hated more that he was right. By midnight, a dark SUV took the Reyes family. Teresa with her insulin cooler hugged to her chest, Nico asleep against Isabel, Matteo groggy and cursing softly over every speed bump, to a townhouse near Bridgeport owned by one of Dante's holding companies. The place was clean, anonymous, oversecured. Reinforced locks, blackout curtains, cameras covering every entry point. A broad-shouldered driver named Gianni stood at the front door with a thermos and a patient expression that suggested he had seen worse nights. I stay outside, he told Olivia. Always. If anyone knocks, you call me first. Inside, the quiet was unnerving. No hallway arguments, no irons hissing, no familiar coughs through thin walls. Safety felt like exile. Olivia slept 2 hours on the couch, then woke before dawn and set up a command station on the dining table. Laptop, legal pads, charging cables, a map of Santa Marta, and a whiteboard Gianni found in a closet. She divided columns into tenants, motions, evidence, threats. Dante arrived at 6 with espresso and a banker's box of documents. Temporary injunction hearing got moved, he said. Judge is unavailable until next Thursday. Of course he is. She took the coffee anyway. I filed emergency status. They can't sit on health risk. They can if someone above the clerk tells them to. She opened the box. Security contracts, subcontractor lists, renovation bids, shell company ledgers with names buried under initials and coded transfers. Enough smoke to imply fire. Not enough yet to convict. You're giving me this? She asked. I'm giving you what I can, without getting everyone in this house killed. She looked up sharply. That your sales pitch? It's the only honest one. By the third day in the safe house, complications multiplied faster than filings. 2 detectives showed up at Santa Marta and asked for Olivia by full name, carrying a warrant application draft alleging she had tampered with fire scene integrity and conspired to induce panic for injunctive advantage. Luca's signature wasn't on it, but his fingerprints were everywhere. Anonymous tip, edited hallway clip placing Olivia near the basement door, witness statement from a tenant who had already told her privately he couldn't read the English form he'd signed. The same afternoon, 3 undocumented tenants called Olivia in tears after being approached separately by plainclothes officers who offered a simple trade. Stop giving statements about the fire, and immigration wouldn't review your file. Olivia put the calls on speaker for Dante that night. He listened, expression stone flat, then texted someone with one thumb. Names. She gave them. By morning, he said, they won't come back. And if they do? He met her eyes across the spread of papers. Then you tell me before you tell your judge. She almost snapped at him, then stopped. This was the shape of their alliance, her law, his leverage. Ugly, necessary, temporary. They worked until 2 a.m., parsing ledgers line by line. Dante knew which vendor names were real crews and which were laundering fronts. Olivia knew how to tie inconsistencies to sworn declarations and subpoena language that prevented clerical disappearance. He dictated corporate hierarchies on a legal pad. She translated them into discoverable relationships. Somewhere after midnight, Johnny put old boleros on low through a kitchen speaker, and the room softened despite itself. Ink-smudged hands, cold espresso. The city held at bay by thick glass and bad men's money. Dante rolled his sleeve to reveal an old scar crossing his forearm. Delay costs me, he said without looking up. In money? In blood. He capped his pen. Every day Santa Marta isn't cleared. Someone asks if I've gone soft. Men like Carbone don't ask twice. There it was. The name neither of them had spoken yet. Heavy as steel. Olivia leaned back. Then why keep delaying? He answered too quickly to be rehearsed. Because kids were choking on smoke in my building. She held his gaze. Your building. His mouth tightened. For now. She should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt the strange vertigo of seeing a wall crack and finding a person behind it. The next morning, Isabel insisted on returning to Santa Marta for essential equipment. Industrial shears, account books, Teresa's good machine pedals. Dante refused at first. Olivia threatened to go alone. In the end, he sent Gianni and 2 vetted men. No logos, no chatter. The building was half-gutted at the basement level, air still tasting faintly of char and wet plaster. City notices flapped on the front door. Restricted access. Someone had already started stabilization work without court clearance. In 4C, dust lay thick over the kitchen tiles. Isabel moved with brisk precision, filling boxes, speaking only when necessary. Take the blue tin, she said. No, that one, not the red. Olivia watched her mother avoid one corner of the living room where a cracked plaster saint, Santa Marta herself, dragon at her feet, sat crooked on a shelf. The statue had belonged to Teresa, then Isabel, then somehow no one. Its base was chipped from a move years ago. When Isabel turned to the bedroom, Olivia reached to steady it as a truck rumbled outside. The statue shifted too easily, snagged on the lace runner, and dropped. It hit tile with a hollow thud and split at the base. Inside the broken cavity was a wrapped oilcloth bundle. Olivia stared. Her pulse climbed into her throat. She peeled back the cloth. 2 narrow ledgers, hand-ruled columns in blue ink, initials instead of names, dates spanning 23 years. Tucked between pages lay photocopies of insurance claims, fire inspection reports, and one Polaroid of a warehouse doorway she knew before she understood why. Because she had stood outside it at 16 while firefighters kept her back. Her father's warehouse. Isabel was beside her in an instant, face gone white. "Give me that," her mother said. "No, Olivia. No." She held the ledger against her chest, shaking now. "You hid this here." Isabel's voice dropped to a ragged whisper. "I hid it so you would stay alive." By saying nothing? For 10 years? For 20? Isabel swallowed hard. Your father found discrepancies in arson reports. He thought if he documented enough, he could force someone honest to act. He was wrong. Olivia flipped pages with numb fingers. Entry after entry, policy numbers, payout amounts, addresses, coded notes. C approved, L arranged access, city cleared. Then the date burned into her memory. The night her father died. Beside it, one line in darker ink, R. Reyes refused revision. Site cleanse authorized. The room tilted. "Who wrote this?" Olivia asked, voice breaking. "You?" "Copied from the originals before they disappeared." Isabel's eyes filled, but did not spill. "A friend in claims gave me ledgers for one night. I copied until sunrise. I hid everything. I waited." "For what?" "For someone strong enough to use it and survive it." Outside, one of Dante's men knocked twice, time warning. Olivia wrapped the ledgers back in oilcloth with fingers that barely worked. In the hallway, she called Dante before the elevator reached the lobby. "I found something," she said. His voice sharpened. "Are you safe?" "For the next 5 minutes. Meet us at the safe house. And Dante?" She closed her eyes, seeing the line about her father burn behind her lids. "Bring whatever truth you've been rationing." When they returned, Dante cleared the dining table and listened as Olivia spread the ledgers, insurance copies, and the Polaroid in a careful grid. Johnny stood watch in the doorway, pretending not to hear. Dante read in silence, face blanking the way professionals blank faces when the information is catastrophic. "Carbone," he said at last, tapping the coded C entries. "Luca for the L. Your father's line." He exhaled once. Jesus. Olivia stood rigid, arms wrapped around herself. "I want corroboration, chain of custody, immediate federal contact. Not rumors, not revenge." "You'll get it." His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then at Olivia. "Don't talk." He answered on speaker but set the volume low. "Luca," Dante said evenly, "you found your missing spine?" A laugh crackled through. "I found your mess. Boss says you're sentimental now. Tenants, children, rescue heroics." Papers rustled on Luca's end. Then his tone turned mean. "You were supposed to clear Santa Marta, not host survivors." Dante's voice stayed lazy. "If you have a point, the point is, the fire should have solved everything. Instead, Isabel Reyes walks out breathing, and you look incompetent." A pause. "Carbone wanted her gone before she sang. Now we got smoke, no corpse, and feds sniffing because you can't follow simple orders." Olivia's blood went cold. Isabel, at the sink, gripped the counter until her knuckles blanched. Dante said, "Careful, Luca. Careful, I'm cleaning your spill. If this leaks, it lands on you anyway. You bought the building, your signatures, your security jackets. Public face, remember?" Click. Deadline. No one moved for 3 full seconds. Then Dante set the phone down with surgical precision, as if sudden force might explode the room. "He ordered both fires," Olivia said. Not a question. Dante nodded once. "First your father's warehouse, years ago. Now Santa Marta. Isabel was the target. I was the mask. Rage rose in her so clean, it felt cold. All this time she had aimed every weapon she had at the man in front of her. And he had been both predator and pawn. Dangerous, complicit. And now, like her, marked for disposal by someone higher. She pulled the ledgers toward her. Then we stopped playing defense. Dante looked up. Something fierce and careful met in his expression. You're talking war. I'm talking records, warrants, testimony, admissions. Courtroom war. Her voice hardened. If you want me in this with you, this ends in indictments, not extra funerals. His answer came without hesitation. Done. At the sink, Isabel finally turned, eyes red-rimmed and steady. For your father, she said quietly. Olivia nodded, hand flat over the ledger that had slept inside a saint while half her life burned around it. For all of them, she said. Dante moved first. Phone's in the kitchen drawer, he said. All of them except one burner. Olivia bristled, but she obeyed. Within minutes, he had Gianni pulling Ethernet cables from the wall, and Isabel at the table signing a sworn statement in careful, slanted script, while Olivia scanned each ledger page twice. Once to an encrypted drive, once to a cloud folder under a case name that looked like tax prep. At 2:14 p.m., she emailed a request for emergency federal witness intake to every contact she trusted, and 3 she didn't. At 2:19, Channel 9 pushed a breaking alert. Tenant activist, developer, tied to possible arson fraud at Santa Marta. Olivia clicked the clip and felt her stomach turn to metal. The segment used hallway footage of her crouched near the basement door after the fire, cropped tight to hide caution tape and investigators behind her. It cut to Dante carrying Nico through smoke, then to archived photos of his prior acquisitions with ominous music under the anchor's voice. Anonymous law enforcement sources suggest a staged emergency may have been used to delay lawful redevelopment. Her own name rolled under the chyron. Dante's followed. By the time the segment ended, social media had done what fire couldn't, turned victims into suspects. Then came the city order. A PDF stamped by the Department of Buildings hit her inbox from a clerk she knew. Emergency structural demolition authorization, Santa Marta Apartments, execution within 72 hours. Olivia stared at the timestamp. No engineer report attached. Doesn't need one, Dante said. Not if the commissioner signs emergency authority. They're going to erase the scene. They're going to erase your case. Her phone vibrated with tenant calls, one after another. Doña Celia crying because her nephew saw the news and told her to disappear. Mr. Han from 3D saying 2 officers came by asking whether Olivia had offered him cash to lie. A teenage boy from 5F whispering that men in black jackets were back and marking doors again. By 4, 2 detectives and a uniformed sergeant knocked at the safe house carrying a broad subpoena for all documents related to alleged fire conspiracies. Plus, a preservation notice that read like a threat. Surrender materials voluntarily or face obstruction charges. Olivia didn't open the door. Johnny spoke through it while Dante recorded. Counsel will respond, Johnny said. We are counsel, one detective answered, amused. For the city. Dante leaned toward the peephole. Then send a warrant with a judge's signature and stop fishing on my porch. The detective's voice hardened. You think this porch belongs to you today, Moretti? Bootsteps retreated down the path. Engines started. Inside, Teresa clutched her rosary so tight, the crucifix left marks in her palm. If they knock again? Mateo asked. They won't knock, Dante said. They'll come through. Olivia opened a new filing packet with hands that wanted to shake and didn't. Then we get in front of it first. Emergency stay on demolition, motion to transfer evidence into federal protective custody, petition for tenant witness safeguards. Dante watched her type, jaw set. Carbone's accelerating. He's scared. He's clearing the board. She didn't look up. Not before I put his name on a docket. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and old panic. By 8:30 the next morning, Olivia stood in courtroom 4B with 2 binders, one overnight affidavit from Isabel, and a legal aid attorney who had agreed to stand beside her because judges behaved better with bar numbers in the room. Dante sat 3 rows back in a plain dark coat. Too still. Judge Halverson entered, scanned the emergency motion, and frowned before anyone spoke. "Ms. Reyes," he said, "you are not licensed counsel." "I am petitioner and resident representative, Your Honor, with supervising counsel present." The city attorney rose immediately. "Public safety compels immediate demolition, structural compromise, electrical hazards, gang activity." "Show me the engineering report," Olivia cut in. "Classified pending inspection." Halverson tapped his pen. "You have photographs of alleged tampering?" "I have sworn statements, video, and financial records establishing motive for arson and evidence destruction." "Financial records obtained how?" "Lawful possession by a material witness." The city attorney smiled thinly. "Or fabricated to extort a property owner." Dante shifted in his seat. Olivia felt it like pressure change. She presented the ledgers, chain of custody declaration, and Isabel's affidavit naming Carbone-linked insurance claims. She asked for 48 hours. Just 48. Freeze demolition, assign independent arson review, place witnesses under protective order. Halverson read for less than a minute. "Motion denied," he said. The words took a second to land. "Your Honor." "Denied. Petitioner lacks standing for requested federal transfer. City retains emergency authority. Any allegations of criminal conspiracy are referred to state investigators." Olivia heard her own voice, sharp and breaking through anyway. "State investigators are the ones intimidating my tenants. Mind your tone. Mind your record." The bailiff stepped forward. Her supervising attorney grabbed her sleeve hard enough to bruise. Halverson banged his gavel. "One more outburst and I hold you in contempt." She swallowed fury like glass. As she turned to gather her papers, 2 plainclothes officers entered from the side door. "Olivia Reyes?" one asked. She straightened. "Yes." "Warrant for your arrest, obstruction of justice, witness coercion, and interference with fire scene evidence." For one absurd instant, nobody moved. Then the officer took her wrist. Behind her, Dante rose half out of his seat. "Sit down, Mr. Moretti," the city attorney said, without looking at him. "Unless you'd like matching bracelets." In the hallway, cameras appeared as if summoned from concrete. Microphones shoved toward her face. "Did you stage the fire? Are you working for Moretti? Did you threaten tenants?" She kept her mouth closed while cuffs clicked. At Central Holding, time became fluorescent and slow. She sat on a metal bench in a room cold enough to ache, replaying every filing line she could have written better and every warning she had ignored. Across from her, a woman in scrubs slept with her forehead against the wall. Somewhere down the corridor, a man shouted for a lawyer until his voice went hoarse. Near midnight, a public defender she'd never met slid onto the bench beside her. "Bad news first," he said. "They're asking to hold you 48, pending review." "On what evidence?" "A witness statement says you offered cash for testimony." "Who?" He hesitated. "Paredes, Unit 2A." Olivia went still. "He can't have. He signed an affidavit yesterday that said the opposite. The defender looked down at his folder. Mr. Paredes was found dead 2 hours ago. Apparent overdose. Statement came in this afternoon. The room narrowed to a pinpoint. No hearing could unring that. No motion could resurrect a man who had trusted her with his name. She pressed her palms against her eyes until sparks burst behind them. This was what Carbone meant by clearing the board. Not just smears and delays, but subtraction. Witnesses reduced to paperwork, then paperwork revised. When they finally released her the next day on a technical bond condition, surrender passport, no contact with listed witnesses except through counsel, she walked out into sleet with stiff wrists and a hollow behind her ribs that felt like hunger and grief at once. Dante waited by the curb, coat dusted white. He opened the passenger door without speaking. She got in. Halfway to Bridgeport, she said, "Paredes is dead." "I know. You knew, and you didn't tell me in there. You were in a cage. There was nothing to do but survive first." She turned to the window. "I asked him to testify. You asked him to tell the truth. He died for it." Dante gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles blanched. "No. He died because Carbone kills people who don't disappear on command." She wanted to argue, to blame, to place this somewhere other than in the center of her own chest. Instead, she sat in silence while sleet stitched gray lines across the windshield, and the city pretended to keep moving. That night, Dante did not go inside. He stood under the awning outside the safe house, rain seeping through his collar, phone dark in his hand. Gianni kept watch at the gate, giving him the kind of distance men give each other when words would make it worse. He had been 17 when Carbone first called him useful. Useful meant collecting from men who owed money they never had. Useful meant standing by while a family's furniture hit a sidewalk. Useful meant learning that signatures frightened people longer than fists. By 25, he had become the face people saw before they lost homes, leases, businesses, names. He told himself he was better than Luca because he preferred pressure to blood. Then Santa Marta burned with a child in the stairwell, and that lie finally ran out of room. He checked the burner again. No new messages from Carbone, which was worse than threats. Silence meant planning. Behind him, the front door opened softly. Olivia stepped onto the porch wrapped in Teresa's shawl, her booking bracelet still around one wrist because she hadn't cut it off yet. She looked exhausted enough to break, furious enough not to. "You should sleep," she said. "So should you." Neither moved. After a long moment, he said, "When I was 22, I signed clearance on a building in Pilsen. Thought it was routine. One old man refused to leave because his wife's ashes were in the bedroom. Luca sent 2 guys to convince him while I was at another site. He stared out at the rain. He fell down the stairs. Neck broke. Report said accidental." Olivia was very still. I paid for the funeral anonymously and told myself that counted as conscience. A bitter laugh escaped him. I built an entire career on that math. Harm plus money equals balance. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel warmth through cold air. "It doesn't," she said quietly. "I know." He turned then, and for once there was no armor in his face, just fatigue and something close to fear. "If this goes the way it usually goes," he said, "you end up dead or disappeared, and I end up alive long enough to hate myself for it." Olivia held his gaze. "Then we don't let it go the usual way. I don't know how to do this your way. You already started." She touched the cuff mark on her wrist with her thumb. "You didn't shoot your way out of court today. You waited. You gathered evidence. You sat outside a holding cell while they called me a criminal and didn't burn the building down in response. A breath shook loose from him, almost a laugh, almost grief. That was restraint, not redemption. "Good," she said. "Redemption can wait." He looked at her mouth, then away, then back. Like permission was a language he had forgotten. When she kissed him, it was brief and fierce and not soft enough to be mistaken for comfort. It tasted like rain and sleeplessness and stubborn hope. He rested his forehead against hers afterward, eyes closed. Inside, a floorboard creaked. They stepped apart. "Tomorrow," Olivia said, voice steadying. "We make certified copies, separate caches, and go around state channels completely." Dante nodded. "Tomorrow." Tomorrow broke before dawn with shattered glass. Johnny shouted from the hall, "Down!" Olivia hit the floor as the front window exploded inward. Mateo dragged Teresa behind the kitchen island. Nico screamed from Isabel's room. A flashbang rolled across tile and detonated with a concussive crack that left everyone deaf for a beat. By the time Dante reached the back corridor with his sidearm drawn, the intruders were gone. So was Isabel. Her bedroom door hung open. The lock plate was splintered inward. On the bed lay Teresa's shawl, cut clean through one edge, and a phone Olivia had never seen before. It rang once. Dante put it on speaker. Carbone's voice filled the room, smooth as polished wood. "Good morning, children." Olivia's hands curled into fists. "Where is my mother?" "Safe enough if we keep this civilized. You have papers that don't belong to you. I have a witness that doesn't belong in court." Dante spoke low. "You touch her, Vittorio." "I already touched everything you love, Dante. That's why we're speaking." A pause, amused. "You want terms? Fine. Bring the original ledgers to Santa Marta during feast night. Public crowd, candles, music. You hand me the books, I hand you Isabel. Everyone goes home." Olivia stepped closer to the phone. "And if we bring police? Then your mother dies before the first siren turns the corner. Also, I release footage placing Ms. Reyes in my payroll and you in my arson chain. You both burn. Neat, yes?" He disconnected. For a second, only Nico's crying filled the house. Teresa sank into a chair, whispering prayers through chattering teeth. Mateo punched the wall hard enough to split skin. Dante stood rigid, phone still in his hand, eyes gone flat with murder. Olivia took one breath, then another. "No," she said. Dante looked at her. "No. No to trading blind. No to panic. No to letting him choose the script." She wiped blood from Mateo's knuckles with the corner of her sleeve and turned to Dante. "He wants a public handoff because he thinks crowds protect him. Good. We use that. You're not walking into Santa Marta with him controlling the exits. I'm walking in with a wire, duplicate ledgers, and federal ears in the walls." Dante's expression darkened. Too risky. Everything is too risky now. Her voice sharpened. "You said war. This is war. But it ends in records, remember?" He held her stare for a long beat, then gave one tight nod. "Feast night," he said. "We build the trap." Olivia picked up the dropped phone, opened Luca's contact from the call log, and hit dial before fear could catch up. When he answered, she said, clear and loud enough for everyone in the room to hear, "Tell Carbone I agree to the exchange at Santa Marta. Feast night, in public." She ended the call, and only then let herself shake. Feast night turned Little Village loud on purpose. Music spilled from church steps and folding table speakers. Vendors lined the block with elotes, tamales, cheap glow sticks, saint candles, raffle tickets. Children darted between adults painted in sugar skull makeup. And old men argued over dominoes on milk crates like the world had not sharpened into a trap. Santa Marta stood in the middle of it all. Dark windows and caution tape dressed up with string lights someone had hung anyway. People still brought flowers to the front steps for Mr. Paredes. People still crossed themselves when they passed the scorched basement door. At 8:42 p.m., Olivia stood in the gutted lobby wearing her father's old silver cross under her blouse and a wire taped just below it. Agent Sloan had fitted it herself in a parked van 3 blocks away. "Keep your hands away from your chest," Sloan had said. "We need clean audio. If he asks to pat you down, stall and pivot. We have eyes, but you are the center of this. Dante?" "Upstairs with entry team. He moves when you give phrase." "What phrase?" Sloan's jaw had tightened. "You said you wanted to choose it." Olivia had nodded once. "Then it's this. Faulty wiring." Now, in the lobby, she held a leather folder containing copied ledger pages and 2 blank sheets on top. The originals were in a fireproof lockbox already in federal custody. Carbone thought he was negotiating with fear and sentiment. He was negotiating with document control and microphones. Dante's voice came once through her earpiece, low and rough. "You still have time to walk." She kept her eyes on the doorway. "No." A pause, then, "I'm right above you." Outside, drums rolled from the feast procession. The crowd cheered at something she couldn't see. Then Vittorio Carbone entered Santa Marta like he owned even the smoke. He wore a navy overcoat, silk scarf, silver hair cut close, expression almost grandfatherly until you noticed the men fanning behind him. Luca came last. Restless eyes, gun hand twitching near his jacket. Between 2 guards, wrists zip-tied in front, was Isabel. Olivia's breath caught hard enough to hurt. Her mother looked bruised, exhausted, furious, but standing. Carbone smiled. "Ms. Reyes, you inherited your father's stubborn timing. You brought my mother. I said I would." He glanced around the ruined lobby. Sentimental place for business. Olivia lifted the folder slightly. "You get papers, I get her." Carbone held out a hand. "First, proof. First, release 1 tie on her wrists. Good faith." Luca stepped forward. "You don't set terms." Olivia turned her gaze to him like he was gum on her shoe. "I wasn't speaking to the errand boy." Carbone laughed softly. "There she is." He nodded at one guard. "Cut one." The zip tie snapped. Isabel flexed one wrist and stared at Olivia without blinking. "Don't rush," that look said. "Don't break." Olivia took 2 steps closer, stopping where the lobby tile changed color from old fire damage. "You had my father killed?" Carbone's smile thinned. This again. "You ordered a warehouse fire because he refused to falsify an investigation report." He sighed theatrically. Men die in industrial accidents every week. Not with accelerant on the threshold and a revised electrical log filed 6 hours later. Luca's head jerked toward Carbone. Carbone didn't look at him. Olivia pressed. "Then Santa Marta. You called it cleanup. You targeted my mother to silence a witness and tried to frame Dante." Carbone's voice cooled. "You're very educated for someone who still confuses power with justice." "I know exactly what power is," Olivia said. "Power is paying officials to call arson faulty wiring. Power is private security jackets on public terror. Power is telling yourself whole families are liabilities instead of people." A muscle moved in Carbone's cheek. "Your father made the same moral speech. It bored me then, too." Upstairs, Dante's voice crackled once, strained. "Keep him talking." Olivia shifted the folder to her left hand, giving the wire cleaner line of sight. "Say it plain, then. For all your men listening, for Luca, for the record." Carbone's eyes sharpened. "For the record?" "Yes." Tell us why you burn buildings with people in them. Silence held for a beat too long. Then Carbone stepped closer, almost intimate. Because rot spreads, he said softly. A neighborhood, an enterprise, a city office. If one piece won't obey, you cleanse it. Fire is efficient. It erases books and teaches survivors gratitude. Lucas smirked. One guard looked down. Olivia felt her pulse in her teeth. You call murder cleansing. I call it continuity. Outside, fireworks cracked. The building shuddered faintly with the percussion. Olivia took one more step. You taught Dante this. Carbone's mouth curled. I built Dante, gave him a suit, a territory, a purpose. And now he forgets his nature because a girl with legal pads kissed him in a safe house. Luca barked a laugh. Above her, a floorboard creaked, too loud. Luca's head snapped upward. Who's up there? He hissed. Carbone held up a hand, eyes never leaving Olivia. No one who matters. Luca moved anyway, backing toward the stairwell. I'm checking. Stay put, Carbone said. Luca ignored him. Everything accelerated. He reached the base of the stairs, saw the faint red laser dot from a tactical scope sweep across cracked plaster, and understood at once. Set up, Luca shouted, drawing his gun. It's a setup. Carbone swore and grabbed Isabel by the arm, yanking her hard against him as shield. Guards raised weapons. Outside, someone screamed as the first shot blasted through the lobby ceiling. Olivia dropped behind a concrete pillar as glass exploded from the old front door. Her earpiece blared, overlapping commands. Stand down, federal agents. Weapon down. Move, move, move. Luca fired up the stairwell. Bullets chewed banister wood. Dante came down 3 steps at a time with the entry team, weapon trained, shouting, Luca, don't do this. Luca answered by kicking over a metal can near the wall. Liquid sloshed across tile. The gasoline smell hit instantly. No, Olivia shouted. Luca flicked a lighter. Flame whooshed along the trail, racing under debris toward stacked drywall by the old mailboxes. Fire climbed like it had been waiting. Sprinklers did not trigger. Of course they didn't. System still manually isolated after stabilization work. Carbone dragged Isabel toward the rear corridor, gun jammed under her jaw. Back off, he roared, or she dies now. Dante froze mid-landing, fury and calculation warring in his face. Olivia looked at the spreading fire, then at the utility control panel, half hidden behind a fallen beam near the manager's office. During her evidence dive, she had photographed every shutoff in this building. Blue valve for domestic water, red wheel for fire main bypass, temporary lockout chain, cheap padlock. She moved before fear could vote. Keeping low, she crawled through smoke toward the panel. A guard saw her and swung his weapon. She hurled the leather folder at his face. Pages burst like startled birds. He flinched. She grabbed a broken pipe, smashed the padlock once, twice. Metal snapped. She wrenched the red wheel counterclockwise with both hands until her shoulder screamed. For one suspended second, nothing. Then the sprinklers detonated overhead in a deafening rush. Water hammered flames, guns, faces. Fire shrank to sputtering patches. Smoke turned to steam. Carbone cursed, lost footing, and Isabel drove her elbow backward into his ribs. His gun arm jerked wide. She dropped and rolled. A federal agent lunged, taking her behind cover. Luca, drenched and wild-eyed, fired toward the stairs. Dante leapt down to tackle him. The shot went off at point-blank range, punching into Dante's side. He grunted, staggered, but slammed Luca into the wall hard enough to crack plaster. Gun skittered across flooded tile. Olivia ran to Dante, grabbed his jacket, dragged him behind the pillar as another burst shattered a light fixture above them. Stay with me, she snapped, pressing both hands to the blood soaking his shirt. He clenched his jaw, Carbone. I see him. Carbone had regained his gun and was backing toward the side exit, one hand clamped on his bleeding ear where shrapnel had nicked him. He fired twice blindly toward agents, then shouted over the chaos. "You think a wire kills me, girl? Judges owe me. Commissioners owe me. Half this city owes me." Olivia rose halfway from cover, voice cutting through water and sirens. "Then say their names, Vittorio." He stared at her, incredulous and enraged. "Say the names of everyone who signed your fires clean." He laughed, hoarse. "Halverson, Deputy Commissioner Bell, Detective Rourke. You want more? I can buy your prosecutor by Tuesday." Several agents exchanged sharp looks. Olivia took one step into open line, daring him. "And my father?" Carbone's face twisted. "Your father chose smoke." Dante, pale but conscious, caught her wrist. "Enough." She held Carbone's gaze one heartbeat longer, then said clearly, into wire and room and history, "Not faulty wiring." The tactical team moved as one. Flashlights, shouts, bodies. Carbone tried to run and slipped on flooded tile. Two agents drove him down, wrenching the gun free. Luca, half conscious under Dante's weight, reached for an ankle holster. Dante trapped his wrist and slammed it once against concrete until the pistol clattered away. He could have broken the man's throat. Instead, he pinned him and shouted, "Cuff him! Alive!" Steel clicked. Carbone lay face down in water and soot, breathing hard, still snarling. "You're dead, both of you. You have no idea who you touched." Olivia stood over him, soaked, shaking, voice steady. "No," she said. "You finally said it on the record." By the time they carried Dante out, the feast music had died into sirens and helicopter chop. Crowds pressed against police tape, phones raised, faces lit blue, red, blue. Someone shouted Olivia's name. Someone else screamed murder. Agent Sloan shoved a blanket over Olivia's shoulders and walked her straight to an unmarked van, while EMTs loaded Dante into an ambulance, oxygen mask already on. Isabel climbed in beside Olivia, wrists raw, eyes hollow and fierce. "You did it," Isabel whispered. Olivia shook her head, watching Dante's ambulance doors slam shut. Not yet. At the federal field office, they separated everyone into bright rooms that smelled like stale coffee and toner. Olivia gave her statement 3 times. Once to Sloan, once on video to an assistant U.S. attorney, once to a grand jury coordinator who never stopped typing. She handed over chain of custody logs, backups, cloud keys, and printed transcripts of Carbone's recorded admissions before anyone could lose them. At 3:17 a.m., Sloan slid a paper cup of coffee toward her. "Your audio is clean," the agent said. "Confession, names, hostage coercion, attempted destruction of evidence. Plus, your ledgers corroborate historical claims." "Dante?" "In surgery. Bullet went through soft tissue, missed organs by luck and bad aim." Olivia let out a breath she hadn't noticed she was holding. Sloan watched her for a moment. "He also gave us a full proffer before the operation. Named shell structures, payoff channels, city contacts, 3 judges, 2 captains, and where Carbone keeps leverage files." Olivia blinked. "He proffered without counsel?" "He asked for counsel and then talked anyway, while they were wheeling him in." Sloan's expression softened a fraction. He said, quote, "Write faster." By dawn, federal warrants rolled across the city. Judge Halverson was escorted from his condo garage in handcuffs, bathrobe under his coat. Deputy Commissioner Bell's office got boxed by agents before she reached her desk. Detective Rourke's second phone pinged at a suburban storage unit full of burned file backups and cash bundles, vacuum-sealed in contractor bags. News anchors who had called Olivia a suspect now used phrases like sweeping racketeering case and decades-long arson conspiracy. In a hospital ICU room 2 floors above the city waking up, Dante lay pale under monitors, one arm bandaged, eyes half open when Olivia entered in borrowed scrubs. "You look terrible," he rasped through dry lips. She laughed once, wet-eyed. "You got shot. Still observant?" He shifted, winced. "Carbone?" "In federal custody. Luca too." He closed his eyes, relief and exhaustion passing through him. Alive. Alive. She sat and took his uninjured hand. "You kept your promise." He looked at her, serious even through morphine haze. "You made me." Outside the room, Isabel stood with Teresa and Mateo, all three watching through the glass. Teresa touched the window and whispered a prayer that sounded, for once, less like pleading and more like thanks. 6 months later, sentencing day smelled like rain and polished wood. The federal courtroom was packed. Press, tenants, lawyers, men in suits pretending they had never heard of each other. Carbone sat at defense table in a dark suit that could not make him look less caged. Luca beside him, face thinner, eyes deadened by pretrial math. Olivia testified at allocution about Santa Marta, about Mr. Paredes, about her father's report and her mother's silence, and the cost of treating neighborhoods as kindling. Her voice shook only once. When she stepped down, Dante rose from the witness bench in prison khakis and a borrowed tie. He had already pled to reduced conspiracy and financial crimes as cooperating witness. Today, the judge finalized terms. "Mr. Moretti," the judge said, "you participated in criminal enterprises that harmed hundreds." "Yes, Your Honor." "You also provided substantial assistance that dismantled those enterprises." "Yes." "Do you have anything to say before sentence?" Dante looked toward the gallery where Olivia sat between Isabel and Mateo. "I spent years calling coercion business," he said. "People lost homes because men like me made profits sound lawful. I can't undo that with testimony. I can only stop lying about it." He drew a breath. "I accept custody. I accept supervision. And when I get out, if this court gives me the chance, I'll build things people can actually afford to live in. No theatrics. No plea for mercy. Just terms." The judge sentenced him to a limited custodial term with credit for cooperation and strict post-release monitoring. Carbone received life-equivalent years under racketeering, arson, murder conspiracy, and witness tampering. Luca got less and looked angrier about it. In the hallway afterward, reporters shouted questions. Olivia ignored all of them. She found Dante near the marshal's transport door, hands chained at the waist. "I'll audit every contract you touch," she said. A tired smile ghosted across his face. "I was hoping you would." The marshal nodded. "Time." Dante met her eyes one last second. "Don't wait if waiting costs you." "I'm not waiting," she said. "I'm building." He gave one short nod, as if that answer mattered more than anything else, and let them lead him away. The first day he came home, the lobby smelled like starch, coffee, and fresh plaster. Olivia heard his knock through the hum of sewing machines and looked up from a stack of tenant intake forms. For a second, she saw two versions of him at once. The man from the courtyard in a charcoal suit and bruised knuckles, and the one now standing in a plain work jacket with sun lines at his throat and a folder of licensing paperwork under his arm. Teresa was first to move. She stood, marched over, and tapped his chest with 2 fingers. "You eat?" she demanded. He blinked. "Yes, senora." "You're too thin. Sit." Mateo barked a laugh from the stairwell. Isabel, at her machine, watched Dante for a long beat, then nodded once, the closest thing to absolution she gave anyone. He crossed to Olivia's desk. On the wall behind her, a new sign read, "Santa Marta Housing Rights Clinic Eviction. Defense, Lease Review, Tenant Co-op Council." You changed the lobby, he said. We changed ownership, Olivia corrected, sliding papers toward him. Tenant cooperative charter. Forfeiture transfer finalized this morning. We vote tonight on rehabilitation phases. He read the header and whistled softly. You did it. We did it with 37 signatures, 3 grant writers, 2 church basements, and 1 very scary retired accountant from Pilsen. She leaned back. You ready for probation compliant, transparent bidding? He set down his own folder. Illinois contractor license, bonded accounts, no cash jobs, full payroll reporting. A faint smile. You're welcome to inspect my books whenever you want. I already plan to. For a while, they worked side by side in companionable concentration, interrupted by tenants asking about mold notices and school district forms. It felt oddly intimate, this ordinary labor. That evening, after the co-op vote passed unanimously and the last neighbor drifted upstairs, Dante found Olivia on the roof beneath a string of temporary bulbs. The city stretched around them, loud and indifferent, while wind lifted loose strands of her hair. He stood beside her at the parapet. I wrote speeches for this, he said after a minute. In prison, terrible speeches. She smiled. I'd still like to hear one. He shook his head. The short version is better. He turned to face her fully, voice unarmored. I love you, Olivia. Not because you forgave me. You didn't, not cheaply. Not because you made me better like a miracle. You made me accountable like a contract. You stood in a burning building and chose evidence over vengeance while I was still choosing between bullets. His throat worked once. I used to think love was possession or debt. With you, it's practice. Daily, honest, hard. I want that, if you want it too. She felt tears sting and did not look away. I love you, she said. And I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be truthful when it costs you, and kind when no one is watching, and reachable when your first instinct is to go cold. He nodded immediately. Yes. And if you ever hide something that puts my people at risk, I lose you. You lose more than me, she said, then softened. But yes. A laugh escaped him, shaky and relieved. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small ring box, then stopped himself before opening it. This isn't leverage, he said. No pressure. I carried it for 3 weeks because I couldn't decide if asking now was selfish. Olivia took the box from his hand, opened it. Simple gold band, small emerald, old-fashioned setting like something chosen to last instead of impress. For the record, she said, voice unsteady, this is not me being rescued. I know. This is me choosing. I know. She held out her hand. Yes, she said. He slid the ring on with fingers that trembled once. Then she kissed him slowly, the kind of kiss that answers old fear with present fact. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers, both of them laughing softly like they had survived something impossible and mundane at once. Below them, from the lobby, Teresa shouted up the stairwell, "If you two are done with drama, come eat." Olivia laughed into Dante's shoulder. That's our cue. A year later, on a spring morning, the lobby of Santa Marta smelled like starch, cinnamon, steam, and new paint curing in the corners. The old hand-painted sign still hung, restored but unchanged. Reyes Alterations. Cash, pay later, or bring empanadas. Beside it now was a bulletin board packed with legal clinic hours, co-op meeting minutes, contractor transparency reports, and a laminated card in 3 languages explaining how to respond to eviction notices. Olivia stood at the front table in a navy blazer, legal certification plaque newly framed behind her desk. A line of tenants snaked to the door. a grandmother with a rent increase letter, a young couple with a mold complaint, a teenager translating for his father. Olivia moved through them with practiced calm, marking deadlines, assigning forms, setting hearing prep appointments. "Miss Reyes," said Doña Celia from 2A's old unit, now occupied by her niece and 2 grandchildren. "Will you check this lease? They changed 1 sentence, and I don't trust 1 sentence." Olivia grinned. "You learned well." In the courtyard, Mateo supervised workers installing raised garden beds where broken concrete used to puddle. Nico, taller now, chased a soccer ball between pallets, while Gianni, still around, now officially head of building operations and unofficial uncle to half the block, pretended not to let the kids score on him. Inside the seamstress corner, Isabel adjusted a quinceañera dress on a mannequin while Teresa argued with a supplier on speakerphone about thread prices and won. At noon, Dante walked in carrying dust-coated blueprints and a box of pan dulce. He wore a hard hat tan and an orange safety vest with the logo of his new company. Mauro and Marta Community Builders. Co-op vetted, publicly audited, every contract posted. He kissed Olivia's cheek in passing and set the pastries on the legal table. Inspection on the east stairwell passed. Elevator permit hearing is next Tuesday. From her desk, Olivia raised an eyebrow. "I'll be there with code citations." He smiled. "I counted on it." That evening, after clinic hours and sewing orders and co-op votes, they locked the lobby together. Olivia paused with her hand on the switch, looking over the room. Old tile patched, new lights warm, neighbors still arguing over coffee, paperwork stacked not as threats, but tools. When she shut off the lamps, twilight from the street left the sign glowing faintly above the machines. Starch, coffee, steam. Home, still stubborn, and this time, on paper and in truth, theirs.